We all ready?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Sergeant Ann Justice with the Phoenix Police Department's Public Affairs Bureau. We're out here at about 19th Avenue in Dunlap this morning. At about 3:40 this morning, officers received calls of shots fired at an apartment complex in the area. When officers arrived, they located an adult male who was pronounced deceased on scene. As officers were in the course of their investigation of that homicide, they were directed to an apartment where a possible suspect might be. Officers, including a canine officer, entered that apartment and the suspect fired, striking the police canine. The officers retreated out of the apartment, and at that time, that's when the suspect exited the apartment with a handgun, and that's when the officer-involved shooting occurred. We have 5 officers who discharged their weapons, varying from about 2 to 10 years of service. The police canine is a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois who's been on the department for 4.5 years. He was transported to a local emergency clinic and is expected to make a full recovery. The suspect who fired at the police canine during the exchange of gunfire outside was struck and was pronounced deceased as well on scene. We're going to be out here for several hours, just finishing up this investigation. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, we saw somebody that was in an ambulance here for an extended period of time on scene. Was that the suspect?
I believe that's one of the 2 people that was shot today.
Is the person that was firing at officers also believed to be the suspect in the homicide?
So the question was, is the person who fired at officers believed to be related to the initial homicide? So it's pretty early in the investigation. That's certainly one of the possibilities that investigators are looking into.
One of the things we had heard from an eyewitness was that as the officers were surrounding that apartment complex, that this suspect came out yelling at your officers, whatever he yelled at them before you guys, and shot at you guys before you shot back.
So like I said, there were 5 officers involved in this shooting. We're still going through the process of reviewing body-worn camera. As you know, our officers wear cameras. So we're going to learn that through the course of the investigation. One thing I want to make note of is this police canine entered the apartment before our officers, which is what they are trained to do, and he saved the lives of all of our officers out here today. Again, 6 years old. His name is Dennis.
Can you take us through that process, kind of from when the first officers got here and as things developed? We saw a SWAT team out here a little bit earlier. So at what point were they brought out, and kind of how did that situation when this person was inside the apartment, how did that develop?
So the question was when our Special Assignments Unit came out here. Our Special Assignments Unit came out after the officer-involved shooting occurred, and they were just out here just to make sure everything was still okay on the scene and check for any additional outstanding people.
Can you tell us the status of the apartment? We've been hearing that it's abandoned. Is ownership active in the apartment?
The question was the status of the apartment, whether it's an abandoned apartment or whether someone lives there, and I don't have that information yet.
Is there any description or age range you could give us on the suspect?
So the individual involved in the officer-involved shooting is a male in his 40s. Okay, thank you.
For that shooting or the homicide, are you currently actively looking for anybody for either of the 2 incidents?
I don't have any information as to whether there's anybody outstanding yet. That's going to come throughout the course of the investigation, whether we determine the person involved in the officer-involved shooting was related to the homicide or whether that's somebody else.
Okay, and then one more thing. Again, we saw the ambulance kind of over here by this bank. Did any of the activity happen over here, or was it all contained within the property of the apartment?
Everything was contained to the property of the apartment complex. So I expect this street to be closed down for at least 4 to 5 hours.
Was there anybody else inside that apartment with the suspect?
So there were initially people outside that came, in the apartment that came out before officers entered the apartment. And they are talking with officers.
Do you know if they're all related, family members, friends?
It's way too early in the investigation to find that out. We're still learning that ourselves.
And we heard calls for crowd control after the initial shooting call. Were there residents inside that were kind of becoming rowdy, or do you have any information on that?
So I don't have any information about anybody being rowdy. It's a large apartment complex occupied by lots of people. I think that was just out of an abundance of caution. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I hear you, Windsor.